Thanks for your company here. Now, Parliament's Appointments Committee has resumed vetting of ministerial nominees this week. The committee has so far successfully vetted and approved 13 ministerial nominees appointed by President Akufo-Addo. Today's, however, comes on the back of bribery allegations leveled against the leadership of the committee and Minister of Energy, Boakye Ejakun. By MP Mahama Ayariga, Elton joins us with what to expect from the committee's session today. And Elton is in Parliament now. We'll try and reach him for the latest on this particular issue. Meanwhile, Mahama Ayariga, Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Samuel Okujetu-Ablakwa, Member of Parliament for North Tong, and Alassane Saibu Surini, Member of Parliament for Tamale North, have written to the Speaker of Parliament calling for a thorough investigation of the bribery claims against the Minister of Energy, Boakye Ejakun. In a joint letter addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, they want the House to initiate an internal investigation to ascertain the veracity of their claims against the minister. We'll bring you details of that particular letter later in this bulletin. Thank you for your company. Now, have you ever wondered how married women in some rural communities in Ghana strive to make a living every day? Well, the story of some married women at Tampizua, a farming community in Boku, is just lots of narratives yet to be told. Now, these women are making good use of the Harmattan season to win sand along the White Volta. But have you thought what exactly pushes them into that business? John News' Mahmoud Mohammed Nuruddin caught up with these women during one of their errands and sent in this report.
It is said that idleness is to the human mind like rust to iron. It is in this knowledge that these women would not spare their leisure time to rust. Hawa Abdullahi is a nursing mother.
It is not a better job, but there's nothing we can do. All we need is to make good use of our time.
Hawa is not alone here. Her counterparts, Rahina to Sumaila and others, are all in this business.
We have no jobs, so we always come to help in order to get something for our daily activities.
These women do not work alone. There are other men who support them to get the work done well.
There are men who always come to gather the sand at one place, but at the moment, they have finished their part of the job for the day and left.
But have you thought about how much these women receive? Well, after a day's hard work, they make at most 3 Ghana cedis each.
They normally give us 60 cedis. The men will take half of it, and we'll take the remaining half and share among ourselves. So each member receives less than 3 Ghana cedis. If we were 10, we'll get 3 Ghana cedis each. In fact, we use that money to buy ingredients, take care of our children, among others. Anytime the vehicle comes, we attend to them and use what we receive for mailing of our grains, among others.
I inquired how they could manage with just 3 Ghana cedis, and this is what Rahina has to say.
We use 3 cedis on the ingredients and buy other items on credit, waiting for other vehicles so we could raise money to pay back.
They supply the sand to neighboring towns like Bolgatanga and Tamale. These type of cargo vehicles come here every 3 days or once a week. Sometimes it takes weeks to get a job. For over 10 years, the business supported the women in their attempts to make a livelihood and build a better home.
Now let's go back to that Parliament scandal still ongoing. Mahama Ayariga, Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Samuel Okujetu-Ablakwa, Member of Parliament for North Tong, and Alassane Saibu Surini, Member of Parliament for Tamale North, have written to the Speaker of Parliament calling for a thorough investigation of the bribery claims against the Minister of Energy, Boakye Jacko. Now, in a joint letter addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, they want the House to initiate an internal investigation to ascertain the veracity of their claims against the minister. My colleague Joseph Akable is in studio with me, and he has the full contents of the letter. What is in that particular letter, Joseph?
So it is addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, and the title for that letter says Request for Internal Enquiry into Allegation of Attempted Bribery of some members of the Appointments Committee of Parliament by a ministerial nominee. Now, in terms of the content, it talks about the fact that this is a joint statement coming from the three MPs, that is Mahama Yariga. You also have Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa and Alasan Suyini. Now, it goes on to say that we jointly request you to carry out an internal enquiry into the veracity of the claims by us in the allegation of attempted bribery of the minority members of the Appointments Committee of Parliament by a ministerial nominee. We, the three members of Parliament, will subject ourselves fully to the process of the enquiry. Please accept our highest regards, and is signed by the three gentlemen in question. So it appears, apart from just calling for an enquiry, they are very certain and they are willing to assist whatever committee will be set up to look into the issues. Thank you very much, Joseph Akable, and he brought us contents of that particular letter signed by MP for Boku, Mahama Yariga, MP for North Tong, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, and MP for Tamale North, Mr. Suhini. And they want the Speaker of Parliament to look into the issue of bribery allegations. We'll be going to Parliament shortly to pick proceedings of the ongoing vetting process. But away from Parliament, on Saturday, international media went wild after newly sworn-in U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order banning people from 7 major Islamic countries, including Iran, Iraq, and Yemen, from entering the U.S. Now, media outlets like the Reuters and Al Jazeera reported of massive confusion, chaos, and protests in several airports across the U.S. The new rules blindsided people in transit and families waiting for them, and caused havoc for businesses with employees holding passports from the targeted nations and colleges with international students. All of this is expected to happen for a few weeks. Many are upset. But what is wrong with Donald Trump's decision? Joining me via Skype to have this discussion, via phone, I beg your pardon, to have this discussion is international politics expert, Dr. Bosman Asari. Thank you for your time, Doc. And good morning to you.
Good morning to you too.
Now, what is your view on this decision by U.S. President Donald Trump?
I think it's something many, and especially many scholars, academics like myself, will put it as very, very unfortunate. This is something which many people were not expecting. Although we remember during the campaign, Mr. Trump was talking about things like this. But we also acknowledge that the U.S. is a global leader when it comes to transformation, democratic governance, immigration, etc. So for such a decision to come from the President of the United States, I think is something which is very unfortunate. And it sends a clear signal that some people are being targeted because of their national origin. And when you even look at the fight against terrorism, there are some countries that have been producing a lot of terrorists, but their names are not part. A country like Saudi Arabia. So many political watchers are surprised that Saudi Arabia has been left off the scene, but others, similarly situated countries, have been put on the list.
Some of his decisions include an indefinite ban on Syrian refugees, suspension of the U.S. refugee admissions program for 120 days, and a cap of 50,000 refugees to be accepted in this year, as against almost double of that. And that was the decision by former U.S. President Barack Obama. What exactly is wrong with these first decisions that the U.S. president has taken?
I think the main problem is that, as I said earlier, the U.S. is widely seen as the global leader when it comes to people moving from one place to another. There are many who describe the U.S. as the bellwether country. You are going to find citizens from all parts of the world. And the Americans themselves describe themselves as an immigrant country. In other words, this is a country that has been built, that has been occupied by people from different parts of the world. So if you have a U.S. president who is now going to put a cap on the number of refugees who can come to the country. A president who is also now saying that we are going to make sure that people from certain parts of the world do not enter the U.S. But we also acknowledge that some U.S. citizens have been attacked globally. But when you look at these countries that have been mentioned, a number of their citizens have not engaged in terrorism against U.S. citizens, even in the U.S. and at times even outside the U.S. So when you are hearing that a country like Saudi Arabia, when you look at most of their ISIS, their men are made up of Sunni Muslims, mostly from Saudi Arabia and some portions of Iraq. So when you are hearing that Saudi Arabia is not on the list, and you know that the U.S. and Saudi Arabia, they are so friendly, they get along, then it sends a clear signal that Mr. Trump is trying to punish certain countries for the inactions or for the actions of other countries, which in international relations, many people are going to condemn.
And let's talk about this. Like you mentioned, America is seen as a land of opportunities, and many people go there to live the American dream. But for many, a lot of people are being punished for the sins of a few. Let's talk about human rights. Does his decision breach any international code?
In terms of international law and even international diplomatic law recognizes sovereignty. As a country, you are sovereign. You have the right to make certain decisions to govern your domestic environment. But we also know that international relations, international diplomatic law, all of them encourage countries to be having interaction, free movement of people from one place to another, as long as you are meeting certain international requirements. But we also realize that some countries are very, very influential. They are able to take certain issues other countries cannot take. And when you look at most of these international conventions we have, even the major intergovernmental organizations like the UN, the World Bank, most of their funding, a high percentage normally comes from the U.S. So it appears the U.S. is in a certain class of its own. Others are not yet there. So there are certain things the U.S. can do, and they get away with it. But in terms of particular laws that have been broken by the U.S., there is nothing like that. But countries acknowledge that among themselves, between themselves, certain decisions must be made that will inure to the benefit of others. But clearly, with this decision that has been taken by Mr. Trump, this is something that will go against certain countries. So we are hearing the German Chancellor has condemned it. In Britain, the Prime Minister has done same. Other countries have done same. So it's a clear indication that this is something many countries are not so happy about.
All right, and like you mentioned, the UK there's actually a lot of protest in the UK right now, and Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and Liberal Democrat leader Tim Farron are calling that the nation should not accept him because there's a planned visit by President Trump to the UK. Now, what could all of this mean for America?
No, it says a clear signal, an indication that the U.S. is becoming so unilateral or isolationist in its policy. Because normally you have situations whereby countries in the international system decide to go solo. And this is what the U.S. administration is trying to do. And Mr. Trump is making the justification on the grounds that, oh, this is our domestic environment. We must put domestic interests ahead of international or foreign concern, which is very legitimate. But if the British government is also seriously committed to human rights, committed to ensuring that some people, because of where they are coming from, are not stigmatized, are not used as scapegoats to fight terrorism, I think the British government will also have that particular right to say, we are not going to accept you into our country. And that will push U.S. lawmakers and other citizens to put pressure on their government to change course. Because as it stands now, I don't think it bodes well for the image of the U.S. as a global leader, as one of the main countries supporting the fight against terrorism and even addressing poverty around the world.
Doc, now let's talk about these affected countries. Now, we know that Iran has also come out to say they're not going to accept citizens from the U.S. Until this whole issue is trashed. But let's talk about what the affected countries can do now. We know that a lot of people have been detained in transit. They cannot move to the U.S. So what can these affected countries do for themselves and their citizens?
Apart from what Iran has said, ensuring that U.S. citizens will also not be given passage to Iran and maybe Iranian territories, etc. I don't think these are countries that can do so much. You look at a country like Somalia, law and order is still something which is far-fetched. You look at Yemen, these are countries that are really struggling, so they can't do so much. So normally we expect that other countries in the international community will come together to champion the cause of this country. So we expect the UN member countries in general, the 194 or so, to come together and condemn the actions of the US. Let's be frank, these are countries that are the receiving end. Most of them are highly dependent on other countries. We look at, apart from Iran, which economically is doing very, very well. For these other countries, because of the wars, you look at Iraq, completely decimated. They are now getting back to traction. You look at Libya, stability has not fully been restored. So these are countries that actually need the help of the international community. So for the U.S. to come out at this time to openly say that they are not going to allow their citizens to enter their countries, and at times they go to some of these places, U.S., Britain, and other places for education, technology-related purposes. So I think that this is a big blow to the world, and other countries must be seen to be working in concert to put pressure on the U.S. administration to change course.
Right, Doc, now, while all this is happening and the U.S., there was an airstrike in Yemen and the U.S. struck an Al-Qaeda base, killing some 3 Al-Qaeda leaders. But let's talk about this moving forward, because for President Donald Trump, his main argument is they're trying to fight terrorism. But we know that some of these terror groups actually do some of their radicalization programs via the internet and all that. So moving forward, what could be done to deal with this issue of terrorism without, it affecting innocent citizens from some of these countries?
So I think the fight against terrorism, generally, this is something, the strategies are very broad. But you look at a country like the USA, you try to work with your allies to ensure that all of you are on the same page. And I think when you look at what someone like former President Bush Jr., Mr. Obama, and others have done, they try to work in concert with their allies to ensure that they will be able to address the problem. But now when you look at what Mr. Trump is trying to do, he's trying to send a clear signal that we don't want the fight on our soil. In other words, they don't want the terrorists to come to the U.S. to come and attack them. Wherever they are going to pursue them and chase them over there. So this is why he has come up with this policy that, these citizens from these countries are not going to be allowed. But once we allow them, terrorists can take advantage. They may end up infiltrating the innocent citizens, and they will be part of the people who will come to the U.S. So I think that the U.S. Strategy is, let's go and look for them wherever they are. Let's go and attack them. But the U.S. must also understand that we live in a globalized environment. Other countries are equally affected by the activities of terrorism. So let's ensure that all of us are on the same page. When it comes to Africa, we know the problem is in Somalia, but we know Kenya is affected, Uganda, and other countries in that region. So what can we do to come together as an international community so that we can address the problems? As the U.S. has shown, they are trying to do it alone, which will not augur well for the international system.
Finally, Doc, before you leave, there's been a lot of public outcry, there's been protests, social media, campaigns and all that. What can the U.S. government do in tackling this particular crisis that has developed as a result of the president's executive decisions?
You know, the U.S. is widely considered the paragon when it comes to democracy. So demonstrations are part and parcel of the system. Mostly the demonstrations are very peaceful. But if what we are hearing is anything to go by, some of them are increasingly becoming violent. But from the side of the U.S. government, I think it's going to be very, very difficult because you have a system where some people are completely for what the president is doing and some people are also completely against. So we even heard of some cases that went to court, and these individuals who were detained at the airport have been given the permission to go to their places. So that's a clear signal that you live in a society that is so polarized, and this society, the members will ensure that they will be able to champion their cause. But the good thing for the Americans is that they have a system, the legal system works, the democratic institutions work. So apart from the demonstrations and everything, I know the president will even be encouraging the detractors, those who are against the policy, just go to court and let's hear what the judges will say. So, and I know there are many judges out there who will look at some of the decisions and they may take decisions that will favor those individuals who have been detained, and they may even end up, you never know, it may go to court and the judge may end up striking out the executive order, and Donald Trump will not be able to accomplish the main intentions of this particular policy.
Thank you very much for your time, Dr. Bosman Asare. He's an international relations and politics expert, bringing us some, expertise on the current crisis in the U.S., where there's been executive orders by U.S. President Donald Trump for some citizens of 7 major Muslim countries to be prevented from entering the country. Away from that, the 13 ministers who were approved on Friday have begun official work today. Maxwell Agbagba has been moving from ministry to ministry, looking at the minister's first day at work. He's been interacting with some civil servants at the Ministry of Education, and they shared their expectations of the new minister.
We work very well with her. We've lost her, but we also expect in Honorable Napo, who I have had the opportunity of meeting at least for a tete-a-tete with him, and we all expect that. I've known him since in the Health Committee of Parliament. Okay. Even as a medical doctor, he's been there for the past 12 years. So we expect so much from him to come and continue from where Professor Nana left off. So we've spoken to him, he's gotten a vision, and we as civil servants are going to support him to achieve that vision and mission that he's bringing to this ministry.
Okay, interesting. So, I mean, it takes a lot of time to adjust to somebody, like adjust your boss. So with a change in government and then you having to work with different people, what's the feeling like usually when you have a minister and the person would have to go because the new government is in or because there's a reshuffle or something?
Like I said earlier, I've had the opportunity of meeting with that man called Napu. Okay. And he doesn't look medical. That he has an idea about education, so many ideas about education, and you wouldn't believe it. And he spoke like he was a professional teacher or somebody, an educationist. So we believe that he's coming here with something, that we're going to support him to achieve the manifesto. The MPP manifesto has so many things into ideas, into education. What they're going to do about basic education, what they're going to do about vocational and technical education. I mean, it's going to be continuation, but maybe there's going to be some improvements, some additional something. Like we have 200 community day signals in the schools, right? He's thinking that why were we just doing community day signals without thinking about technical vocational schools to feed the technical universities, right? Yeah. So some of them will definitely be turned into technical vocational community day, whatever we're going to call it, but it should be technical vocational, well furnished with hostels to rebrand technical and vocational education. Okay. Because we're just doing it like who are those schools going to feed the technical universities? Okay. So we were building 200 community day student high schools without thinking about the technical and vocational schools. So you see that there is an idea of going to turn some of them into technical and vocational schools, so that they can also feed our 10 technical universities. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osman. Okay, so I have another worker here with me. He's at the procurement unit. Sir, what's your name?
Theophilus Okain.
Theophilus, your expectations of the new minister?
Well, as a civil servant and a senior procurement officer at the Ministry of Education, I followed the vetting, and I was very impressed with a new minister, the performance at the vetting. And considering this performance, I hope he's going to continue with what we have started. There are a lot of projects which, especially for the senior secondary school, that is the secondary education improvement project. We hope that he will come and continue so that we'll be able to at least end that project successfully.
Now when we hear of procurement, one thing that rings, a bell. I'm sure you know what I'm going to talk about.
I don't know, but let's put that aside. Today we're here to look at the expectations, our expectations.
So we are not talking about
No. Okay. Don't let us talk about that today. As a procurement person, I'm just interested in the procurement activity we have started. Procurement is a process. You start from a point and then it ends somewhere. So
includes those sources.
Oh no, you wouldn't talk about that today. We're just talking about the expectations.
Okay. So I mean,
think,
how do you hope to, help the new minister, Dr. Matthew Poku Prempeh, to achieve that dream and vision?
That is the work of civil servants. We're here to serve governments. Governments go, other governments come.
Yeah.
But it is our duty. We are technical people. So we look at your ideas, we support you.
Okay.
We bring different ideas to enable you achieve your targets.
Okay, thank you very much. But before I go to some of the other workers who are working on the corridors, and some of them seated here, let me find out from Mr. Osman. Do you have any plans to welcome him?
Obviously, sometimes every Monday we have directors' meetings.
Okay.
Right from here, I'm going to the conference room to meet. Okay. We were expecting him to come welcome him, but just if the meeting starts, we're going to be in the meeting. He might walk in there to say hello to the directors and heads of units. So, but if he comes before the meeting, obviously, that's why I'm hanging around, expecting that he comes and then we, just welcome him to his office and then. But I hope that when he can, he might walk into the directors' meeting to say hello to us and then.
So that was my colleague Maxwell, but by interacting with some workers at the Ministry of Education, finding out from them what they expect of the new minister, as they call him, Napo. Now let's go back to the Parliament alleged bribery scandal, precisely the bit about Muntaka Mubarak, who's a minority chief whip, swearing by Allah that he had not given out or doled out any money to MP for Boku Central, Mahama Ayariga. Now, he's denied any such action and he's sworn by Allah. What does Islam say about swearing? Beatrice Edu had a chat with Islamic scholar Sheikh Arimeyal.
I mean, swearing is an acceptable practice in Islam, and it comes under a circumstance where one needs to prove his integrity and the honesty and the truthfulness about an issue on which he is supposed to make a certain observation. In fact, in the Holy Quran, God himself swears, and anything by which God swears indicates that importance of that particular thing, the value and the position within the divine scheme of things, and so merits that God swears. So God swears by human being, God swears by things he has created, he swears by the sky, swears by the moon, swears by time, and so on and so forth. But as far as we as humans who are part of the creation of God are concerned, when we want to prove a point or to establish our honesty about a thing, and the highest element that we can use as a basis to be able to prove that is to swear. But what is it that we swear by? Do we also swear by other creatures or swear by God himself? The acceptable practice is that whenever we are swearing, we must swear by God. So the highest and the most superior being by which we can swear to prove the integrity and honesty of some position or comment.